Hey, what's up everybody? It's Christian with Reaper Disc, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Discraft Scorch. The Scorch is an 11-speed understable distance driver, with flight numbers coming in at 11.6-22. Now the peculiar thing about the Discraft Scorch that sets it apart from most every other kind of higher speed flippy driver is the fact of the rim of this disc. Now, whenever everyone thinks of a beaded disc golf disc, they think of either a putter or a mid-range, and that's about it. Well, the Scorch falls into a really weird category of a beaded driver. And I know it's kind of weird to think about, but right on the bottom side of the rim right here is actually a little bit of a bead. Now, it's not kind of obstructive or intrusive. It's not obnoxious by any means. It's not necessarily a micro bead, but it's a very low profile bead. It doesn't like stick out, or it's honestly, you can forget that it's even there most of the time. However, it does round off that bottom rim and make it a little bit more comfortable. That, paired along with the fact of the bottom of the rim is a convex shape, unlike most other drivers being concave, whereas, well, keep picking this up, whereas the bottom of the rim will typically like start from the parting line and then curve down to the lower portion of the rim down here. Instead, this kind of like starts at the parting line and then curves away and then back, making kind of like a convex shape away from the rim. And that actually goes a long way with, one, they tend to be just a little more unstable, discs that do have that convex rim, but two, it makes it much more comfortable for fan grips and control grips. And, a lot of players who are going to be gravitating toward the Scorch are going to be players who are looking for more control or aren't necessarily throwing with a ton of power and aren't trying to get like a big hard power grip onto the disc. Instead, they might be throwing with a little more of a fan grip and need something a little more comfortable. That being said, the rim of the Scorch is very, very comfortable for those kinds of grips. And I'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. But first, let's get over into the actual testing and the flight of the Scorch. So, being a high-speed driver, I was throwing this with a fair amount of power, and just to note, I wasn't really throwing with too much wind out on the practice field, and I'm also throwing a Z-Swirl Scorch. I'm not the biggest expert on exactly how some of these more niche plastics and plastic blends from Discraft, I do believe this being a Ledgestone edition here, kind of fare up and compare to each other. However, I can pretty well expect this to be flying like typical Z plastic does. There's not really too much of a difference other than kind of the coloring and the swirl patterns. So when I got out and threw this, starting with a hyzer, I was noticing that this is pretty understable. I threw it with a decent amount of hyzer and it flipped the flat and even started a nice slow turnover before straightening out and having a nice little kind of mild hyzer finish back at the very end. Now when thrown flat, I had to throw this extremely soft. I had to really back off of this because I was noticing that when I was releasing this flat, it was just wanting to cook over onto a cut roller. It wanted to burn over and then just cut across the grass to the left. And I really wanted to try to get just a nice straight flat flight out of this. In order to do that, I really had to start taking a lot of power off of this shot. But whenever I got it right, it flew straight, but started having a nice slow turning flight to the right before again straightening back out and getting that nice very soft hyzer finish at the very end. Now, again, like I said, I had to take a lot off of this, but if you are able to get the release correct on this, you're going to be able to get a nice straight flight out of this driver and probably get it to go for a decent distance at the same time. So when throwing on an anhyzer, I realized very quickly that this was just going to be a roller for me. So that's about what I attempted to do. I got it up, and if you fully commit to this being a roller shot, then you're really probably going to be able to rip a good roller with this disc. I was about half committed to it because I was still trying to see it fly through the air before coming down on the ground. But instead, it just kept wanting to come down on edge. If I committed to this more and, got all the way over onto a good anhyzer angle and got it over onto the ground on a good a good roller angle, I would probably be able to really rip some good distance with this. This shot, unfortunately, had just a little too much cut angle on it and ripped off to the left pretty good. It did actually stand up, but not before cutting back to the left a really, really long ways. So, again, if you want to commit to a full-fledged roller with this disc, you're really probably, going to be able to pull off some good roller shots. Now, when I threw this on full power, I put it on just a little too much hyzer. I was expecting it to get a little more flip than it did, but even so, it was able to flip up and then even get to a turnover angle before straightening out and then fading at the end with a lot of forward push this time. That 6 glide really, really pushed this disc down the fairway even as it was slowing down and fading at the end of the flight. So my final thoughts on the Scorch is I think the numbers are just a little off as far as the turn rating. I think the turn of this disc is closer to a -3 than a -2, but that's just my personal opinion and how it was behaving when I was throwing it. Other than that, lower power players are definitely going to be able to get a lot of what this disc is offering with that increased understability. Being a more flippy disc but still having a lot of glide, lower power players are going to be able to now start getting those full flights out of a distance driver and carrying even further down the fairway, giving them new distance potential to start kind of improving their game that way. Now, more advanced players are going to be able to use this for a little more niche shots, such as a just big massive tailwind driver or even a long distance roller. Realistically, I would really, recommend the Scorch to any sort of player, whether you are beginner or all the way up through like a really advanced level player. You can find a use out of the Scorch, and I think that, it's good at what it does. However, you will definitely need to get used to that rim feel. Once you get used to that, I think that this disc is capable of some really fantastic things. So what do you guys think about the Scorch? Do you bag it, and if so, what do you use it for, and how do you like it? If you want a Scorch for yourself, click the link in the description of this video to head on over to reaperdisc.com to grab one there. Don't forget to like this video, leave us a comment, and subscribe to the channel, turning on that notification bell. That way you guys are notified whenever we drop any new content. Follow us on social media at ReaperDisc so you're kept up to date with all of our new product releases, exclusive drops, and restocks. Again, I'm Christian with Reaper Discs, and we'll see you guys in the next video.